What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the neighborhood. If this is your first episode, you've picked a fun one. Today, we're going to be doing our annual Game Awards for 2023. Welcome to the podcast where two longtime friends and sometimes a guest talk about their favorite games from the perspective of an average player. My name is Andrew Kimball.
And I'm Dylan Wren, and we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
Every year, we have given awards to games we played during that year. We do this to add some variety to our Game of the Year conversation, as opposed to just making a top 10 list. This year was so massive for game releases that we decided to do both a list episode and our awards episode. So if you haven't listened to our GOTY episode, be sure to check it out. Without further ado, let's get into our awards.
These are always fun.
We have a bunch of them this year. I'm pretty excited about this. So yeah, the idea is...
Because we took last year's list and then we came up with more categories. And so as the years progress, this will turn into like a 5-hour episode as we come up with
just
more
gonna
and
be
more
like
categories.
That giant end of the year episode that podcasts like to do.
Yes.
So yeah, we have so many. I feel like there's no point in really doing a lot of other stuff. We can just dive right into these awards.
Yeah.
Let's see. The first one, favorite art style.
All right. We don't have nominees. These are we're just picking the ones that we like the best.
Yeah, right. We didn't put that much work into it, I guess.
Yeah, this is not as prestigious as the Keeleys, but
we'll get there someday, maybe.
Maybe they'll ask us to come up with some superlatives they can give awards out for in the like little quick fire, like boom, boom, boom before the show.
Yeah.
But my favorite art style this year was Wild Hearts. I just really enjoyed the like very Japanese art, like painting style that they kind of had going on. Like it was still realistic looking, but like all of the monsters and stuff looked like they had jumped out of a sort of stylized Japanese painting or something like that, which I thought was really cool.
Yes.
I thought it was just kind of a very beautiful, vibrant, and just artistically pleasing to me world.
Stylized is a good word for it. I played that game for like an hour and 45 minutes of that was the character creator, which I really enjoyed.
Massive.
But one of the things that I did appreciate it in that time was its sense of style.
Yeah. I still enjoy Monster Hunter more as a game.
Right.
And I do really like a lot of the Monster Hunter style monsters, art, that sort of thing. But I really enjoyed the way this game looked, even if I didn't enjoy it as much as Monster Hunter. It was still a good game, and it's still just like I said, it was almost as though like you see all these Japanese paintings and it's the monsters depicted in them. It's like it looks like they just came out of those paintings with kind of the I'm not like a very artistic-y person,
artistic-y.
with painting, drawing, that sort of thing. But like the swirls and stuff, it's a very cool style.
Yeah,
that I enjoyed. What about you? What are you giving this award to?
So I'm giving this award to a game that I haven't played yet, but it's on a wish list because I want to get to it, and that is The Last Faith. Which, if you haven't heard about this game, is essentially kind of like the gameplay and pixel art of Blasphemous, but with the world of Bloodborne.
Okay. So like right up your alley, basically.
Yeah. So I really like, it's almost as if somebody took Bloodborne and converted it into like an indie retro kind of 2D game, and the way that it translates into that genre, it looks really cool.
Yeah.
It's the main reason I want to play it, because one of the reasons I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet is just some of the reviews and feedback is like, this is a pretty good like Metroidvania game, but you know, it has some room for improvement. So I'm like, I'm gonna play that eventually.
Yeah, like
but
when
I'm not
it comes
to
sale or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna rush out and play it, buy it full price when I still haven't played Blasphemous 2, which is probably a better game.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. That is true. And that's the art style of Bloodborne is just amazing, in my opinion. So putting that anywhere, like that sort of gothic, Victorian, Lovecraftian vibe, yes.
100%. Next award. Favorite music.
All right. I am giving this award to the Spider-Man game.
The Spider-Man game.
Yes, because the second one hasn't come out yet. Just ask the award season. But specifically the music that's playing as you're just like swinging around the city.
Yeah.
That not only is just swinging around New York City as Spider-Man probably one of the most fun traversal systems in gaming, but they have sort of that heroic, epic, I'm trying to like strings and horns and stuff kind of going on and swelling as you're like swinging around, or you jump off the Empire State Building and fall for like 15 seconds, and then it sort of like swells and picks up as you like catch yourself and start swinging off. Like that's just cool. That, it makes you feel like you're playing Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in the movie.
Right. Yeah, and they take that kind of theme and they sort of modernize and kind of give it some hip hop flavor for Miles.
Yeah.
And then in Spider-Man 2, they kind of mix them together, and depending on which Spider-Man you're playing, what's going on in the story and stuff like that. So yeah, I think music plays a big part in that game, in that whole series.
Yeah, for sure. What about you?
So I don't think I could justify not giving this award to Final Fantasy 16 this year. Another game where music is just kind of integral to the experience. The battle music, there's certain character themes that are played and then come back in certain ways and are remixed, and like your hub theme, like when you're at your base and all those kind of things, they all play into the experience in a really meaningful way. So that will be like my official award.
Yeah.
But I have to give a nod to Hi-Fi Rush because that's a game that came out at the very beginning of this year, and it's all about music, and the music is great, and the game is played to the beat. The combat is like a rhythm game.
Yeah.
It was such an interesting idea, and then they executed it so well. The style of the game being kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon. It definitely deserves its recognition.
Yeah.
But for me, like the more meaningful of the two is definitely Final Fantasy. But we couldn't have this category and not reference or mention Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And that's on my list of games to go and play because I've heard so many good things about it, especially about the music.
Yeah, and another reason that it didn't quite make it to this award or my Game of the Year list is because I didn't finish it. Like I fell off of it and haven't gotten back to it. It's not uninstalled, I don't think. So like I plan to finish it, but it's just one of those things where it pretty easily moved out of the way for some other games that I enjoyed a little bit more, even though what they did is like really cool.
Yeah.
So our next award, favorite character. This one's interesting because it looks like we picked the same one.
Yep. Which for me, like as we were making some of these lists, I was realizing like, oh, I don't have a whole lot of characters in games that I've played. I will preface this, and we're kind of getting into our more character centric portion of the awards. I haven't really played a ton of Baldur's Gate yet. I mean, I've played a bunch of it, but I'm still very early in the game. So you won't be seeing Baldur's Gate characters show up on this list, but it'll probably be full of them next year.
Right.
So for me, at least. But yes, so we both picked Merrin as our favorite character. Merrin from Jedi Survivor.
Yeah.
So I know I picked her because I was like, yeah, she is a great character. I loved getting to spend more time with her as a main character because in Jedi Fallen Order, she was on like I think she was on the last planet I went to in my playthrough. And then the last like kind of bigger planet. And then you go through like the end game basically. And so she wasn't really a part of the game a whole lot.
Yeah.
She was just kind of at the very end for me. And so getting to have her be a more active companion in Jedi Survivor was really cool, and getting to learn more about her and see what she was doing, and her and Cal sort of evolving, I thought was really cool. And so I put her too, in part because a lot of the characters that I played this year were like custom characters, or like just not in like, oh, my favorite character is John Wick from Fortnite, or, like it's not somebody that, so I'm curious to hear why you put Marin on this list, as you have played a whole lot more character driven and character centric games this year.
Yeah, there's definitely some characters in Phantom Liberty that I could justify putting on this list. But Marin just struck that perfect balance of, like you said, she was barely in the first game. And so seeing who she actually is throughout this game, her being like a central character, her relationship to Cal being kind of at the forefront of the story, like all those things. Looking back at this year and thinking about characters in games, she was one of the few that I felt an actual connection to as a player, and really cared about what happened to her, what was happening with her, those kind of things. Whereas there were a lot of interesting characters this year. There are also a lot of characters that just didn't do anything for me this year. Like, none of the characters in Lies of P were really like...
What? You didn't like Pinocchio?
Yeah.
Geppetto?
I like the level up...
No, the
level up girl,
lady.
Sophia.
Sophia.
But like Assassin's Creed, I didn't really care about any of those characters. Evil West, didn't care about any of those characters.
Yeah.
I did like some of the characters in Mafia that I played this year, but not more than Marin.
Yeah.
Like I played a lot of games that had characters in them, but I didn't have that many strong connections to very many of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I was more surprised knowing that you played Phantom Liberty, knowing that you played Spider-Man 2, knowing that you played Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
That Marin beat all of those characters,
Yeah, Final Fantasy had some really good characters, but I think some of the pacing in that game did them a bit of a disservice.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, the characters that I liked were the same as previous games, except now uglier. But like most of the new characters that they introduced, with the exception of like Kraven, kind of let me down. So there were some. Phantom Liberty is probably got characters that were like the closest to making the list. But again, just as far as that connection.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I went off. If I was going for like most interesting character, then I probably could have come up with a few others, but there's just something about Jedi Survivor. And I actually had some other characters like going through my mind before I settled on her, but it was just thinking back because it's been so long since I played that game. It came out early this year. But like, as soon as I thought back and remembered playing to that game, I was like, oh yeah, no, that was like, I had genuinely cared about that character.
Yeah.
Whereas some of these others were interesting or cool or whatever, but just didn't quite hit that height.
Right.
And we can just kind of roll from there right into our award for best romance.
Yeah, so why don't you take this one first?
Sure. I put Cal and Marin because I just thought that was kind of like it was that kind of like sweet, almost innocent sort of romance. And it was that so many times in stories, you see two characters that you like and you're like, oh, they should be together. That's just how it should work. So what do the writers do? They throw some sort of like roadblock in front of them, or they separate them, or they make them get mad at each other over some misunderstanding. And it's always so frustrating. But in Jedi Survivor, it was just such a satisfying arc watching these two develop and actually get together and grow together and work together as a team and be a couple and be a team. And it was like, this is what we want when we see two characters that should be together.
Yeah.
We want to see them be together. And so I was just so happy to see that in that game and not see halfway through they're like about to maybe be a couple. And then all of a sudden Cal does something that she doesn't like. And so she starts not talking to him. And then it's like the back third of the game is them arguing. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
No, they just kind of, they gave us in reality, maybe the typical path, but in storytelling, the very usually like not typical path. And I really enjoyed watching that unfold.
Yeah, like normally any sort of romance is the source of conflict or a source of conflict in the story to kind of like give it that spice, versus in Jedi Survivor, like there were a few little points of maybe some tension, but for the most part, it was just like, no, this isn't really like a source of conflict for our characters. Like that's the Empire that's going on right now. Like that's we're like, they are just like a regular old little couple that's, you know, like figuring things out because it's Star Wars universe and you can be in millions of different places, but it wasn't a main source of conflict, which was definitely nice. So they realistically probably are mine for this year, but I did load in to try out Cyberpunk's new stuff, and the first thing that happened was Pan Am called my V up and was like, hey, we should like hang out. And so she just like came to V's apartment and was like, hey, this was nice. And I was like, Pan Am is the best. She's great.
She's a really excellent character, and that her romance arc was probably like the best, maybe next to Triss.
Yeah.
So
two CD Projekt Red games, you know.
Yeah. Phantom Liberty, if they have those opportunities, like I didn't really take advantage of them. I don't really think that was the focus of that expansion so much. So that I didn't really play any games that were other than Baldur's Gate 3, where like you have the option to romance a character. And I'm very early on in my romance of Shadowheart.
Yeah.
In Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one where I'm like, next year, this, like I said, this category will likely be dominated by Baldur's Gate, because it's like, okay, well, I'll play through with Shadowheart and then we'll see how Lizelle is, and then we'll.
Nice.
Next category we have is Best Villain.
Yep. Let's leave all that love stuff behind.
Yes. Well, sort of.
So the way I took this category is, I guess I framed it around most surprising, but not most surprising in like, you know, what a multi-dimensional, interesting kind of character they were. It's more of, I thought that Kraven in Spider-Man 2 was much more formidable and like powerful and menacing of a character in that game than I have ever seen, mostly because we haven't really gotten a lot of Kraven media in the modern day. It's mostly like the 90s cartoon and stuff like that. I don't read comics, so I didn't really know much about him other than, he likes to hunt, you know, difficult things that are, you know, powerful. But the way that Insomniac kind of took his arc and his character and what a like imposing force he was just as a like him as a character, not necessarily like his army or whatever. I was like, man, Kraven's actually pretty cool, and I wasn't really expecting that. So
yeah,
I gave it to Kraven, although this has been a year of interesting villains. I mean, some of the games you referenced when we were talking about best character, like Final Fantasy, some of those others, like there have been a lot of good villain characters and bad guys this year, but Kraven was the one that was just like, I had pretty low expectations going in, because he, to me, has always seemed like a lower tier villain.
Yeah, like he I'm not super familiar with Kraven outside of like the sources you mentioned, but I feel like anytime I would see him in like Marvel Ultimate Alliance or something like that, it was one of the first villains you would face or something. As like, yeah, this is kind of like the low tier, easy to get into villain, who's just a normal guy.
Yeah, he's a guy that hunts things. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll throw you up against the super powered stuff later. So it's cool that Insomniac took like sort of subverted that expectation, I guess, and made him an interesting villain.
Right. And like diehard Spider-Man comic fans might be like, well, he's really good in, you know, these stories or whatever. But like to the mainstream who like the MCU and stuff, this is kind of the first, like the amount of people that played this Spider-Man game compared to the amount of people that read comic books. Like this was definitely a introduction to this character for a lot of people. And I think that, you know, it was a good way to do his character. And then just the way that he goes about what he's trying to do in that game. I was like, yeah, he's a big bad.
Yeah.
So who did you pick?
I picked Lilith from the Bible. No, Diablo 4. So
Another
really,
imposing villain.
Yes. I really liked her character design. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I liked sort of the story arc where she, like, the lore of Diablo is there's this unending war going on between heaven and hell, and you're like the plane that you are on is caught in between the two of them, and she's, you know, her stated goal is one of those that's always kind of like an interesting goal, sort of, you know, like that's sort of the thing that made Thanos an interesting villain, where he's like, I'm doing this to like save the galaxy or whatever, like overpopulation is going to kill us all or whatever. Like Lilith is doing everything in the game with the stated purpose of ending the war that constantly makes the life of the people on Sanctuary a living hell.
Right.
And so now you could get more in depth. She's probably not doing it out of just the goodness of her heart, and it would probably also be terrible. But you know, it's the nuances there where it's like, oh, okay, there are all these lords of hell and all of the, like, basically both sides want her dead, which always makes it a little bit interesting too, I think. And so she's like the sort of rebel third party that is trying to do something different. And just kind of playing through the game and her always kind of being one step ahead of the characters, one step ahead of the villain or the like other major players in that story. And then getting to watch like that cutscene towards the end of the game. I don't know if you ever made it there, but just like the ridiculous like 10-minute long cutscene towards the end of the game. Like the beginning of the game has the one where it's like she's being summoned, and then the end has like this big war in hell that she's in. And it's just really cool. So, but she was probably my favorite just because, you know, throughout the game, I was kind of like, I mean, she's kind of got a point there, or her whole thing is like, I am giving you the choice, like the freedom to make these choices or whatever. And then all the people made bad choices. And you can argue like, well, she's making them make those bad choices, which I would agree with. But it's also one of those things where it's like, maybe these people are just terrible people though. So, but it was a cool, I thought she was a very cool villain.
Yeah. And I definitely agree as far as like her design is very striking, very ominous. And there's a reason it was basically the art of Diablo 4.
Yeah.
Until they started doing more seasonal stuff. They kind of changed it on some of the storefronts, but yeah, it's a good choice.
So we did our villains. Now we're going to do our heroes. This year, as I mentioned, feel like most of my heroes have been sort of the blank slate, blank faced, like, hey, just create your own hero. And so that's who I'm giving it to. I'm giving it to the heroes of Remnant 2. I'm giving it to the heroes of Wild Hearts, to Destiny 2, to, you know, all of Diablo 4, all of those games where I am creating my own hero to run through the story of.
All of those games where you just mash A as you power through the character creator and don't even really know what your character looks like.
Correct. All of those. Because, yeah, I mean, it's more about the playing of that hero throughout the game, not what they look like. And, you know, the developers put a lot of time into setting up some defaults that I can scroll through pick the best looking default and go with that.
You remember how weird the Grand Theft Auto Online character creator was?
Not only did they force me to spend so long doing that character creator, but it was like, hey, make your mom and then make your dad, and then here is you who looks like some mashed up, ugly version of that.
Yeah, and it's like you can pick John Marston as your dad if you want, and then you're like, oh god, no, I look terrible. That was such a weird, like, interesting idea, but just in practice, just it was rough. Yeah. And then in Red Dead Online, all the characters intentionally looked ugly. Like, it's like, do you want teeth? Like, do you want gross teeth? A few teeth? No teeth? Because it was like the Wild West, and they're like, we're going to make you gross and grimy. It's like, well, okay, cool.
Yep.
For me, I'm going with Link.
Okay.
So Link is basically just the embodiment of a hero, of courage. He is the Triforce of courage. And he's not really that interesting to talk about because he doesn't speak, and the player has most of the agency, and his thing is kind of like save the princess, and that's what he does. In Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, he's a bit more of a part of the world and bit has more backstory and a very clear tie to Zelda and all those kind of things. But not a lot to say other than Link is the hero. I did really enjoy Final Fantasy 16 and playing as Clive.
Yeah.
And his journey and who he becomes and what he goes through and his ability to like absorb all the different powers and everything. I thought that was a very interesting journey as a hero. So Clive is also a close second. It's just hard to beat someone called the Hero of Time.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. Yeah, I almost put Cal on my list, but I'm pretty sure Cal has been on the list before.
Yeah.
If I had played Jedi Fallen Order this year for the first time, Cal would have definitely made it. But losing some of that newness, he's now an established character, and it's like, okay. Similar to, I assume, the reason Spider-Man didn't end up on your list.
Yeah, he's Spider-Man. He's great. Also, he's kind of a douchebag in Spider-Man 2 because
Venom.
Because Venom. So but Miles, I will say Miles in the Insomniac universe, in his own game, and then I found him to be a little bit more interesting in Spider-Man 2. Definitely, I'm excited to see where he goes in this universe because he's a very interesting character and a good hero. So definitely shout out to Miles as well.
Yeah.
Our next category, our next award is for most surprising game, which I am giving to Evil West because it was a game that I thought I would like. And when I finally got around to it, I really loved it. I had a great time playing through it. The combat was a ton of fun. Basically, just the core gameplay loop of that game was a blast to play, and all the stuff around it. Like the setting and the art style and stuff were definitely fun and interesting, but like the story and characters and all that was just kind of like, meh, it's here, it's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah.
But just playing that game, I had a ton of fun with it, and you're all welcome because I paid money for it and it's coming to PlayStation Plus.
Yes.
So it'll be there when you're hearing this episode.
Yes.
So go ahead and grab it if you have PlayStation Plus.
Yeah, it is one of their free games January is a banger. Like get that game, but also pick up Plague Tale Requiem.
Yes.
Which is like, and play that game. So,
and I've heard good things about Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah.
Which is the third game. So they're starting the year strong over there.
They are.
So what did you pick for this award?
So for this award, I picked Lies of P. I really like, the Souls-like From Software games. But my love of Souls-likes kind of begins and ends mostly in From Software.
Yeah.
I have like when I get in the mood for like I want to experience more of that, I generally go back and play a From Software, like I play Dark Souls again, or I play Bloodborne again. And so
or Elden Ring.
Yeah, recently. And so I haven't branched out into as much of the sort of double A space of Souls-likes that's out there. I've watched videos of people, talking about them or whatever, and I've, talked to you about all the ones that you've played, and I've dabbled in a couple here and there for a little bit of time, but for the most part, I bounce off of them pretty quick just because I'm just not having. Usually there's enough jank to it to just kind of turn me off to it and make me just want to go back and play Bloodborne again, you know? And so that's kind of how I was going into Lies of P. I had seen some of the trailers and I was like, that world, that art style looks kind of cool. I had heard you talk about enjoying the beta and whatever. So I, it came to Game Pass day one and I was like, oh, that's nice. I don't have to purchase this game. installed
That always
it.
helps.
And then to my surprise, it was actually a extremely polished Souls-like.
Some brief spoilers for Lies of P right here. Check the time code in the description to skip ahead if you do not want to hear them.
You know, hearing like, oh, it's a Pinocchio Souls-like, I was like, okay, like that'll the sort of interestingness of that will wear off pretty fast, and then I'll bounce off of it. And it turned out that it was on my Game of the Year list, and I had a lot of fun with it for the most part. There were a couple of bosses that were just annoyingly frustrating.
Yeah.
But overall, I was like, this is a very cool world. I enjoyed the story-ish thing that it was doing. The final twist there at the end was just crazy.
Yeah.
So I should have put that. Have we done our favorite twists yet? No. Or surprises? Maybe this is... Oh, this is the surprise part. That's why I put this here. Because that twist. Now I'm remembering why I put this on the list. At the end of the game, you get to this like little end cutscene where it's like, hey, this guy, like, we've got our agents doing whatever, and then it's like, Dorothy's coming or whatever, and then it cuts to a scene of like this girl in red slippers jumping around like on the rooftops of the city, and it's like, oh, it's Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Like, I was like, what is going on here? So that was like, not only was I surprised that I loved this game, I was surprised at that last 15 minutes after you beat the game where everything is happening, and it's like, holy crap. They're doing like some sort of Fable universe now. That's cool. That was my biggest surprise.
That was pretty surprising. Next, we're going to move out of all of that fun positivity.
Yeah. This is a surprise, but for a different reason.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about our biggest letdown. My biggest letdown this year was Assassin's Creed Mirage, a game that I recently beat.
Oh, okay. Did it get less disappointing as it went on?
It's a mixed bag. And it's a game that I'm planning on doing a video on our YouTube channel, and I would love to do a deeper conversation. I just have to find somebody else who has played it.
Yeah.
It did get better in that I really just like the loop of the Assassin's Creed games. Climb the waypoint, synchronize, do the missions. The stealth is simple but satisfying.
Yeah.
You're finding collectibles and stuff around the city. The city was great in this game, but so much of it felt half-assed or rushed, and so much of it felt kind of cobbled together. So they give you, similar to how the RPGs did it, they give you kind of like different investigations that you can do throughout the city at any time, and then it all culminates in like the head of the order at the end. There is one of those investigations you should do first.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it last. So here's Basim at the end of the game, basically talking to his mentor about some of the struggles and things that were from the beginning of the game. And it's like, this feels so weird. We're having these weird kind of like early conversations at hour 14 of this game.
Yeah.
And all they had to do is make you do that one first, because the other two did kind of feel like it didn't really matter, the order. So just like the structure is kind of weird and janky. The story was a big nothing burger. That they tried to have kind of like a weird First Civilization twist thing at the end.
Yeah. That
fell flat. There was no modern story whatsoever. Just the whole thing, what they claim when you read the like description of the game in the Xbox store or whatever is, follow Basim's journey from assassin, or like from street beggar to master assassin. Nowhere did I ever feel like he had any growth. or like he was becoming a master assassin. It was like, do the introduction, do the like training at the assassin's hideout section, and then you're just in the city doing whatever. And you're ranking up from initiate to recruit to whatever to master as you play through the game and like level up. But he never changes.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like realistically, maybe it's supposed to be taking place over months or years of him like hunting down, but it's when you do it in 14 hours, it's I did this in like a couple of weeks.
When Ezio was evolving, not only did his character look different, which they did some of that with Basim, like you could see him getting older, but it was like, oh, now he has some agency and leadership over the Brotherhood, and he has some control over how things are happening here. And whereas Basim is like always just kind of reporting to his superiors the whole time, and there was just like nothing there. Well, and
Ezio, they spread out over like 3 games?
3 games
as well. So there's a whole lot more time to let that breathe, it sounds like.
But even Assassin's Creed 2, you play as him as like basically an older teenager, like young 20 something. And then by the end of the game, he is an assassin. I mean, hell, even Edward Kenway in Black Flag had more character growth and depth than what they gave Basim in this game. I don't find Basim an interesting character at all, just kind of in general. And it seems like they're kind of pinning the franchise on him a little bit based on how Valhalla ended. So I'm kind of apprehensive about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this game, but for this award, like just booting it up, playing the beginnings of it, my kind of initial impressions that I talked about on that neighborhood watch, especially right after finishing Cyberpunk, it was like, oh man, this is such a bummer for what should have been a good idea. Even if it was just a short side game like it is, there could have been so much more personality to it. Like Miles Morales is a short side game.
Yeah.
And everybody loves that game. It's a great game. Miles is a great character. You feel things when you finish that game. This was just like, I enjoy synchronizing the waypoints, and I enjoy
like you enjoy the game of it more.
The loop. Yeah. I like the kind of very simple stealth that really hasn't changed much. And I like the kind of sandbox puzzles. They did do kind of the like that era of Assassin's Creed with Unity and Syndicate, where it was like, here's a big area and here are some different like opportunities to go in and make your way in and kill the target and all that kind of Hitman-esque missions. They try to do something like that in Mirage, but a lot of it still felt pretty hand-holdy and still felt pretty like you could just kind of sneak around, and ultimately you could hack and slash your way through it and it'd still be fine. They did have the like wanted system that they kind of had from like 2.
Yeah.
Where you like are ripping posters off the walls to lower your one. And that was cool. So like they had some cool things there. You could tell some people that made this game really cared about it, but just Ubisoft as a whole just got in the way.
Yeah. Like the upper management that are not developing it, but are trying to like sell it as a big product have tampered way too much with it.
Well, it was like they took, because it was originally supposed to be Valhalla DLC. And then they saw, oh, we could take this and it could be our fall game this year.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think they saw and were like, we could do this. I think they saw and were like, well, we're definitely not releasing Skull and Bones again. And we have nothing else to release. So I guess let's do this.
If it came out as a DLC, then it would be like, oh, that was pretty good for a DLC on a game, whatever that was a
except for it was coming out for a game that even you, super fan of Assassin's Creed, have not played the DLC for.
No, but if it was still the same thing where it's like, we're going back to the old school roots for this DLC, whatever, I probably would have jumped in.
Yeah.
Or if they would have given it like another year of development to really like
blown it out a little bit.
Yeah, give it some heart, give it some more depth. Either one of those options would have been better than what we got here, but this is what we got.
Yeah.
So it was a letdown. I did finish it. I had enough fun playing it that I finished it, but I think it'll be an interesting one to talk about because I am such a fan of the series, and this is such just like a weird like a weird entry into the series. So
yeah. Do you think that it will get the sort of same treatment as like Unity and some of those got or get now, where people look back on them and we're like, yeah, it was kind of janky and broken at the beginning, but going back, it's actually pretty cool and fun? Or do you think this will just kind of be like, no, this is not a good game?
It'll be the latter.
Yeah.
Unity got a bad rap for its technical issues, but like Paris is amazing in that game.
Yeah.
There's kind of a Romeo and Juliet like love story between your character and his love interest, where she's like the daughter of a Templar and you're the assassin. And so like just that is way more interesting than what Basim's doing in this game.
Yeah.
Plus it was a longer game. It had you had the whole order, like your headquarters that you were fixing up and rebuilding. It had the multiplayer component. It had like customizable outfits and all sorts of stuff. Like this feels like they took about 2 to 5% of some of the things that made other Assassin's Creed games good and just like taped them in there.
Yeah.
And people like Syndicate because the setting was cool. The twins were cool. The combat in the game was kind of like, we're taking back the city of London, either through stealth or with our fists. And it was kind of like a mob kind of thing where your mob was taking over the city from the Templar mob.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. Like the story in that one, I still think is pretty forgettable, but like it did enough interesting things that people look back fondly on it. This one, I don't think does anything interesting.
Yeah.
So what was your award for biggest letdown?
My sort of jokey one is Baldur's Gate taking so freaking long to come to Xbox.
Came right down to the wire, didn't they?
Yes. Well, and like, especially when it's one of those things where their stated reason for it not coming out was because they couldn't get it working like they wanted to on the Series S, like the split screen part.
Yeah.
And it still doesn't. And so I'm like, so you could have just like, it still doesn't work. You still put it out. You could have just been like, sorry guys, split screen doesn't work unless you have a Series X, or it works, but like it might be pretty choppy or something like that, you know?
I think they just hit that point where they're like, well, we're close enough to do something fun at the Game Awards.
Yeah.
We've waited this long. Let's just go ahead and.
Well, and I wonder too if they got some like data on how many people were playing, like, because it had been out on PlayStation for a few years or for a few months at that point.
Right.
They maybe looked at that and were like, well, it turns out no one's playing split screen anyway. So if we put this out, and it's as long as we put like a disclaimer in there, we'll keep trying to fix it a little bit. We'll turn it over to Microsoft, let them fix it.
Yeah.
However it's working. So that's kind of my jokey one, because I'm playing that game now, and I really would have liked to have played it for more.
Yeah.
At this point. But also Redfall and Starfield came out this year. And Redfall seemed like a very cool game. It was made by the people that made
Prey.
It was made by the, Dishonored. It's not the Dishonored people, but kind of that engine.
Well, it's the same developer, but like separate studio.
Right.
Like it's Arcane. But it's the studio that made Prey, not the one who made Dishonored. Yeah.
And Prey is like,
people like Prey.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cult hit.
I played it for a few hours and it seems cool, but I haven't like gotten super far into it, but it seems like a cool game. And the little bit of the parts of Redfall that I did play, it was like, oh, okay, this is a cool, it had sort of like a teleport thing. It had sort of the gunplay of what's the Deathloop a little bit, but like it was not that great. And running around the map and like trying to kind of take places back from the vampires that were overwhelming the city. It was an interesting concept, and I was interested to learn more about the world and stuff. And it was a kind of like I hit the point in the game where cooler stuff, or like it opened up a little bit more, where you could go, like the vampires, you had to like travel into their lairs or something like that in order to like actually kill them or something. It's been a while since I played this game, so I'm just kind of going off of what I can remember. But took over, like I got to the end, I took over the first thing, and then it was like, cool, you've done that now, go to this new island basically and do it again. And I was like, oh no, I'm done. I don't know. It's a game that I can see myself going back to sometime next year once they've updated it and maybe made it a little bit better. I can see myself maybe picking it up again and having an okay time with it. But it was disappointing because the concept itself is kind of cool.
Well, yeah, listening to you talk, like, letdown is the best word because, the idea behind it and what it could have been and should have been, because it is exciting.
It could have been like a cool,
like a multiplayer
Dishonored, Left 4 Dead-y type of thing. But in reality, it was just kind of like, this is not good.
Yeah, it sounded like some of the behind the scenes stuff was pretty bad.
Yeah. And then Starfield came out. Neither of us is like a huge Bethesda RPG person, like Skyrim.
Yeah, I like the Elder Scrolls games.
Yeah.
Well, I've played Oblivion and Skyrim, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, out of the Elder Scrolls games, we've played maybe a third of them.
Yeah, played a little bit of ESO here and there.
Yeah. And neither of us is huge fans of Fallout. And so getting into like, oh, space sim seemed like a cool idea, and then we played it, and I was like, I've played No Man's Sky. I was anticipating this, like, okay, build your ship, you launch out of, like, you take off from the landing pad, you fly into space, you fly to you jump into hyperspace, go to this planet, fly down, land on the planet, and that's what I just described is like 6 different load screens.
Yeah.
And going around on the worlds, I mean, it did have better shooting than the Fallout games that I've played had previously. But it was just not, I don't know. Like, I was going in kind of hoping to be like, sci-fi Skyrim, and it was not that. It was not that for me.
Going the kind of NASA punk route instead of like full on sci-fi, I think kind of made me less interested. For the Wait For It awards that came out a couple weeks ago at the time you're listening to this, I put Starfield as kind of like my most, like, the worst game this year.
Yeah.
And it's mostly just because it's like the big flagship Bethesda game. And it was just it kind of just didn't do anything. It had a few weeks of like conversations and stuff around it, and there were some people that really got into it, but for the most part it just like it did not make an impact. Like, because there definitely are like a subset of people that do really enjoy Starfield, and I'm sure it'll probably have legs like most Bethesda games do. The modding community will come in, they'll make it really cool, but again, I just keep going back to like that moment in time, and maybe it was an accident how good Skyrim was and how it hooked people, but they load you into Skyrim, you kind of wander around, and it's just like the cool thing was like, okay, I'm going to this place, here's 15 different things that'll happen, and emergent things even that'll come up as I'm walking to the next quest objective, and I can hop off at any time and like go investigate and explore these. And in Starfield, like, they don't have that, because if you're in space, you can't really just like go off the path, because there is no path. Like, you have to jump to each individual planet. And so if something's not happening, is the second you jump into that system, it's like, well, there's nothing else to really explore here. And then you get to the planet and it's like, oh, okay, like maybe there's a structure or something over here, but I landed literally right outside the thing that I need to go do. So it's not like I'm walking to this and see a cool thing. It's like I'm here and I can see over in the distance a structure. I guess I could spend 5 minutes walking out of my way when I'm at the entrance of the thing I need to do. So it just was a big miss for me. That one is not as much of like a letdown, because I don't feel like I was really like expecting it. Yeah. Like Redfall, I was kind of like, oh, this could be cool. Yeah.
Starfield, I was like, I mean, I'll play it because it's free and I know it'll be one of the big things that we talk about this year, but I'm not really expecting a whole lot from this game. And I feel like that helped me not care when it was bad. So
Skyrim came out in 2011.
Yeah.
Since then, so many games have done so many interesting. I mean, you mentioned No Man's Sky, but
yeah.
You look at like The Witcher came out since then, Dragon Age Inquisition, Cyberpunk. I mean, just there are so many games that have done things in this space and have made strides. And to be fair, for a Bethesda game, this was like they bragged about it being their least buggy launch. And
yeah.
It is a brand new IP and all that kind of stuff. But it felt like old Bethesda playing it. And then, like you mentioned, just losing the sense of exploration and wonder and being hindered by menus and loading screens. It was just like, man, the setting already wasn't really pulling me in.
Yeah.
But then having to work around the systems was like, yeah, no, this ain't it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, back in 2011, like you said, Skyrim was almost cutting edge.
Yeah.
It was very buggy and whatever, but it was also like, oh, wow, we've never, like, that was kind of like the big mainstream, like, Oblivion was also the start of it, but like Skyrim and then Fallout, and then, that was kind of like where it started taking off, was like Skyrim and Fallout 3, I think.
Yeah.
I forget which order those came out in.
Fallout 3 first.
Yeah.
Because then Fallout 4, people were like, well, this is fine. But
yeah.
It's just more of the same. And then 76. And
yeah, I feel like Fallout 3 and Skyrim were kind of like the big introduction to the wider gaming audience of a Bethesda game. And then they literally really didn't change anything for 3 or 4 releases. And it's like, well, I mean, yeah, but I still enjoy Skyrim better,
Exactly. Well, let's move on to our next award.
Yes.
Best Multiplayer Experience.
I gave mine to Diablo 4.
That makes sense.
I just had a lot of fun running around that open world with other people. It made it decently easy to get in a game. Like, it wasn't a hassle. And that was probably the game I have played the most this year with friends and stuff. Felt right to give it to Diablo 4. Like, it's not blowing anything out of the water. It's not like,
right.
Oh my goodness, this is the best multiplayer experience I've ever had. It definitely deserved it more than Baldur's Gate 3 getting it at the Keeleys. Because I still disagree that that's that is a game that has multiplayer in it, not a primarily multiplayer game. So
this one was tough for me because I didn't really do a lot of multiplayer gaming. Like last year, you and I played a ton of Elden Ring together. This year, there's a lot of single player stuff.
Yeah.
We did play Remnant 2 quite a bit, and so that is the game I'm going to give my award to. I did play a lot of Super Mario Brothers Wonder with my daughter, which was a lot of fun. And towards the end of the year here, I've gotten into Fortnite and been having fun with that, and the finals came out, which I think is a really, really cool baseline for a game. It just needs a little bit more like modes. Like I need to be able to queue up as a little bit of. I need to be able to queue up by myself, basically. Yeah. When I can do that in that game, I think I'm really going to have a lot of fun with it. But being tied to a team of 3, and unless you have 2 other people you're communicating with, like it's just such a rough, uneven experience depending on who you get paired with.
Yeah, because I was going to say that one afternoon that like you, me, and my little brother were playing the finals, I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah. And then every other time that I've looked at it, I'm like, well, they're not on. I don't really feel like jumping in this by myself because that would be a bad experience.
And that was the problem I had with Apex too. And so if the finals can pull in like singles and duos and whatever, like just kind of expand the suite of modes they have.
Yeah.
I think the game itself is really cool.
Yeah. I liked the gunplay. I liked the
destructibility and stuff.
The movement felt good.
Yeah. So that one I'll give a shout, but I think Remnant 2 was probably like the most consistent multiplayer I played with you.
Yeah.
We had some fun like one-off nights with the Wait For It guys doing stuff this year that was fun, but it just wasn't really a big multiplayer year for me. It was a lot more single player stuff, but
yeah,
Remnant 2 was a good time.
I was going to say too, I think I've played more games that are online, but I've played them in like I played Dead by Daylight a bunch this year. I played it as the killer, who was just like, that is, that is to me, in my mind, a solitary experience.
Right.
I played a bunch of Hunt Showdown, but that was mostly by in a solo mode, like not with randoms or something, or with, I think we played a little bit of it early this year, maybe late last year.
Yeah.
But our next category is the best deal in gaming.
Yes. And
is it any surprise that it is Xbox Game Pass?
It's Xbox Game Pass.
Which
have you heard?
Yeah, I was going to say, this category is a little bit of a joke, but also like just looking at my list of games that I played this year that I have on my even just top 10 list. Like I've got Liza P on there, played that on Game Pass. I have Cocoon on there, played that on Game Pass. I have Wild Hearts on there, played that on Game Pass. Remnant 2 is on there. It wasn't on Game Pass when we played it. You're welcome. We bought it so that you could have it on Game Pass. But like 4 of my 10 are on Game Pass. Diablo 4 will be on Game Pass next year because that Activision Blizzard deal is going to go through. I think that means Sekiro is also going to be on Game Pass because it's Activision published.
Yeah.
And so just looking at what will be on Game Pass, it's pretty much the things that weren't on Game Pass were like Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order, the stuff that was on Nintendo, the stuff that was on PlayStation. So it's and even just looking at my expanded list, like Dead by Daylight, Game Pass. Redfall was on Game Pass. It was disappointing, but I still got it for free. I didn't have to pay for that.
Right.
Wolong Fallen Dynasty, Game Pass. MLB The Show 23, I played on Game Pass. Mountain Blade 2, I played on Game Pass.
Hi-Fi Rush was on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Vampire Survivors, those were a couple I played this year that were on there.
And even just like stuff that didn't even make my kind of short list, but that I played for a little bit, like even if it was just a couple of evenings, like Age of Empires 2 and 3, or 2 and 4 were on console that I played and tried out a little bit. I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey is on there.
Yeah, and Origins.
Origins, yeah.
They both are.
Back 4 Blood, still on Game Pass. Like they're like just going down my list. There's so many games that I played. The Dead Space remake.
Yep.
Game Pass. So it is hard. Like that is kind of a jokey award, but also like looking at the list of games that I played, there are some real good games that are just on Game Pass for free that I didn't have to pay for, which is always nice.
Well, and this segues really nicely into our next award, which is Best Indie Game, because I'm giving my award to Sea of Stars, which was on Game Pass.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it is anymore, unfortunately.
Did they just take it off?
I think it's either just come off or will be off maybe by the time this... I'll look it up while you talk.
Well, the only reason that I dove into it was because I kept hearing that it was such a great game, and I was kind of had like the itch for a kind of retro RPG, like that turn-based RPG, and so it was on Game Pass. So I just downloaded it, tried it, had a great time. I fell off and haven't been back yet. There are some other games that pulled me away from it, but I had a fantastic time, and I would love to go back and finish it. And not to spoil anything, but looking at your winner for this award, I think that's another nod to Game Pass.
Yes. I put Cocoon on mine. Cocoon is another one where it's not my normal type of game. It's a cool little puzzle game. And I got, like, I'd heard amazing things about it, and I downloaded it from Game Pass, sat down one evening to play it. I'm glad, on the one hand, I'm kind of glad I didn't buy it because it was a very short game and I enjoyed the experience, but I feel like I personally probably would have enjoyed it less if I had spent like $20 or $30 on it.
Right.
But because it was on Game Pass, I got it for free, and that's always nice. And so I enjoyed that a whole lot, enough to give it my my indie game award. And I do think Sea of Stars left on the 15th. maybe not. I could swear I saw Sea of Stars leaving, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, Game Rant has something on their website about it leaving.
Yeah. I don't know when, but I feel like I saw it as like the...
Because I looked at the like leaving soon recently, and it was like Grand Theft Auto and a couple other things, but
yeah,
I definitely think it's worth probably whatever they charge for it, because it's one of those games that's not super expensive. Looks like Chained Echoes is leaving on the 15th.
All right, Sea of Stars is still on there, but I don't know.
Yeah, you may have confused it with Chained Echoes.
Maybe I confused it with Chained Echoes.
That's the game that Dave is always saying, if you like Sea of Stars, you should play this because it's way better. So
yeah. But I can also see Sea of Stars leaving Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean,
suddenly. So
it's not going to be there forever.
Yeah. So
if not an Xbox game.
If you're hearing this and you're like, oh, I'm interested in Sea of Stars, go play it, because it will leave eventually if it's not leaving.
But soon. I think they also launched on PlayStation Plus. So I think like either subscription you can get it on. So
yeah, but one of those is the best deal in gaming.
Yeah, we didn't give
PlayStation.
We didn't give PlayStation Plus the award. Let's move on to best mobile game.
This should come as no surprise for yours.
Yeah, I gave it to the only mobile game I really played this year, and that's Marvel Snap.
Nice.
Which I'm still playing. I'm not as sweaty about it as I was kind of probably over the summer or so. I usually end in the 90s every season, get the free gold for getting that high.
Yeah.
Try to do some conquest to get whatever the variant is that you win from it. But like this season, I've pretty much only played ladder games because it's like, oh, I have a few minutes, knock a game out, have a good time. Or I'll play like a few matches in a row until I get frustrated, and then I'll put it down. It's also, there have just been a lot more console games that I've been into recently. So Marvel Snap has kind of taken a back seat. But this year especially, like I was
especially that
big
first
into
half.
Marvel Snap. Yeah, I was trying to hit Infinite and do all the things. So
yeah, and Marvel Snap was definitely one that I put a lot of time into, especially early on this year. As the year went on, I took a couple seasons off. The constant clip of like,
it moves really fast.
Here are all the, like, number one, because it's an all digital format, they're tweaking and changing cards and like constantly, and so the deck that I was playing or that I spent money on is all of a sudden not
the same or
not viable anymore. Not that I really spent, but like it's like, oh, I got the season pass, and then like they nerfed the season pass card or whatever because it was broken. And because they're releasing, new cards with the season pass plus a new card every week, like there's a lot where it's like, if you're not willing to pay money for it or spend hours and hours and hours grinding it, you're gonna hit the point where it's just like, oh, now I just don't have a lot of these cards, and there's not really a good way in the game to try to get them, because they talk like they're going to... I know that they're adding a bunch of stuff to Series 3.
They're doing series drops again,
yeah.
In January.
But I feel like those need to happen way more often.
Well, they took them away.
Yeah.
They were doing the Spotlight thing.
Oh.
And so now I think they've got enough feedback that they're bringing series drops.
Yeah.
And the free like Series 3 card and all that, they're dropping them again. So this first drop is big. There's a lot of cards dropping series.
I was going to say, I feel like once a quarter, maybe, once every few months, like, I mean, go ahead and do some drops.
The speed of this game just it needs to slow down.
Yeah.
It's just the meta changes so quickly that it can get kind of tiring.
Yeah. And like, I've been having some fun. Like I still hop into it occasionally, play some of my, old standard decks that are still viable. But I've also taken enough time off that it's dropped me down to like the 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
And so like the idea of trying to grind back up to the like 80s and 90s is just like, I don't feel like spending that much time doing this.
Yeah. So what did you give your award to?
So I gave my award to Magic the Gathering Arena, a better card game. Not one that meets your particular need of it being like 6 minutes or less.
Right.
But I'm a big fan of Magic the Gathering, and I have been enjoying just playing around on Magic Arena. I don't know how easy it is to get into because I've been playing it for years, and so I have a bunch of like they have certain sets of cards that are like current and standard, and then they have like sort of their wider set of cards that are legal in other formats. And so I've been playing some of the like older formats where it's like, hey, basically all of the cards that have ever come out are available for you to make your deck with. So it's a lot easier to like kind of jump back in to Magic Arena, even if I take time off, because sure, I'm missing cards, but I also have a bunch from older sets that still work.
Yeah.
And are still allowed to be played. But I do think even maybe Snap could benefit from something like that too, of like, hey, here's like these cards, like here's a new mode where you can only use cards that were released in 2023, or, you know, something like that, where it maybe, or here's the basic cards that you like series 1 and 2, and then like you can use, or series 1, 2, and 3, and then you can use only cards that have come out this year or something like that. Could be interesting.
Snap is thriving off of its property and off of its like the game is so quick and like satisfying and fun that it's got kind of that addictive quality, but as a platform, it's lacking in a variety of ways. So yeah, more modes or things like that would definitely help it in its longevity.
For sure.
Our next award is for best boss fight / set piece moment.
So my moment is a boss battle that occurs probably like halfway to 2/3 of the way through Jedi Survivor. Maybe halfway through.
I was going to say maybe halfway.
Yeah. And I'm not going to like describe it super, super in depth because like it's kind of spoilery and you should go play it. But essentially there's this big robot that you fight. And it's a lot of like, realistically, it's kind of quick time eventy. But it's huge and there's a lot of like movement and cool stuff going on.
Yeah.
But like, and
definitely a set piece.
Yeah. It's a big set piece moment. Cal and Marin are both involved. It's kind of when you unlock Marin's power to sort of teleport around and stuff. So that's been really cool. That was a really cool boss fight.
So you picked Star Wars. I'm picking Marvel.
Yep.
Because
Disney.
Yeah. Just the money behind these games, especially Spider-Man 2, which is the game I'm giving this award to because I can't pick a set piece moment. But there's one that happens like at the beginning of the game with Sandman where he literally throws you across basically all of Manhattan.
Yeah, I think I've seen like a clip of that on like social media or something, which was cool.
Yeah. And that's literally like the first 10 minutes of the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that mixed with like just some of the symbiote stuff mixed with, there's some stuff that happens with Miles in like the Mysterio quest line. Like just, it has that Marvel money behind it and it has that Sony money behind it. And the production value is pretty much unmatched. I mean, you've seen the like state of play with the lizard fight and everything.
Yeah.
That's the game. When you're doing the story content, it's just like AAA high budget crazy moments. And then when you're doing like the side stuff, it's more of like a video game.
Yeah.
But it's hard to pick one singular moment from that game, but that is basically the game is like set piece to set piece.
Yeah.
So it gets the award.
Yeah, for sure. That is a very cool looking game for sure.
Yes. Our next award, biggest WTF moment. Also the bad game award.
Yes.
Because I went with Gollum.
Oof.
Which was kind of the like earliest of the bad games. I mean, I guess Redfall maybe came out first, but it wasn't on the level of some of these that we're going to mention because Redfall was playable and people beat it, I think. And there were some people that beat Gollum. They were determined for the content people. Or whatever.
Yeah, mostly streamers.
Exactly. Streamers or donkeys or like video people. But man, what a game. And to see the Lord of the Rings IP used in such a way.
Yeah. Well, and that was like so bad the studio just closed, right? Like after it came out, it was just like
which happened with the day before as well.
Yeah.
They're shut down.
Well, I thought they had like closed, but then opened under a new name or something like that.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, mine is, I don't know the exact title. I think it's King Kong Skull Island.
Yeah.
And it's shocking the amount. It feels like everybody who made a bad game was just like, well, Gollum came out, so like we can shovel ours out and it won't be the worst game this year. And like I'm a big fan of the like Godzilla Monsterverse and stuff, and so like not like King Kong Skull Island, I didn't even know they were making a game, but when I saw it, there was an initial moment where I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is maybe worse than Gollum is.
Yeah.
And it's just disappointing to see
IP used like this.
Well, and I guess we've gotten spoiled because like as kids, for sure, we definitely lived through the trenches of any sort of licensed game was probably bad unless it was like Star Wars.
Right.
And even some of those were not great.
Yeah, for sure.
And but we've gotten spoiled in that more recently, like licensed IP games tend to actually be pretty good. You know, like we just talked about Spider-Man, Star Wars, where it's like, boom, these are massive. Even the Avatar game.
Yeah.
Which like it suffers from being an Ubisoft sort of formulaic game, but by all accounts, actually decent game. You know, like it's one that if we had gotten it as kids, we definitely wouldn't be disappointed to have gotten it, you know. And to see not one but two, maybe even more.
Oh like, yeah, I watched an entire GameRanks video on the Walking Dead game that came out this year, and it was like, oh man, this is rough.
Yeah, to see at least 3 licensed games come out that look like they could have come out back in like the early 2000s, where it's like, man, like I thought we had left this part of gaming history in the past. So, oof.
Yep. Next award, Best Ongoing Game. I put Cyberpunk 2077.
It's not an ongoing game. I understand why it gets nominated in these categories and why you're putting it on your list, but it's also like, what?
I did it mostly as a joke. I mean, I've recently discovered why people like Fortnite.
Yeah.
And so that can get my award for real, because even as an outsider, just seeing what Fortnite does is insane. But yeah, I thought it would be funny to put Cyberpunk there. What did you pick?
I put Destiny 2, which is not deserving of the award this year. They've had kind of a bad year, but also Fortnite. Like I'm not like just discovering Fortnite. I have sort of traditionally always played it around the holidays every year. Normally there's like a Star Wars thing that was going on where I would hop in because you could run around with a lightsaber, which is always cool. This year they didn't have that, but they did, like everything's a Fortnite now. Like they've got the Lego Fortnites, they've got the racing Fortnites, they've got the wannabe Guitar Hero Fortnites.
Yeah.
So it is a like that, like just seeing like you said, just seeing everything that they do with that game and how they continue to do stuff with that game. It's always cool to see. Like Alan Wake had like a recap of the first game that was just in Fortnite, like built in Fortnite. Like,
so weird.
It's called Fortnite, but it's essentially like the Unreal 5 engine.
Yeah.
And it's a way to give access to, like, I haven't even really explored some of the like user created custom stuff that looks crazy, you know? So
yeah, it's nuts. Moving on to our next award, we have the oldie but a goodie for either an old favorite you went back to or the oldest game you played this year. So I picked Mafia Definitive Edition, which I played for the first time this year, which the Definitive Edition is older at this point, a few years old, I think. But it's like a remaster of a really old game. The first Mafia game is pretty old.
Yeah, I was going to say it was early 360 era, I want to say.
Yeah. So. And I had a really fantastic time with it. It just kind of scratched that particular itch. I played the whole thing kind of in a week, and really enjoyed the story, being able to skip the driving, and yeah, had a lot of fun with it.
I gave this to the oldest game that I played this year was Diablo 3, which came out in 2012. Still love Diablo. It's 11 years old. I think it's still worth playing even today.
Yeah.
My old favorite that I went back to is State of Decay 2.
It's a great game.
Which came out, I think, very early Xbox One era. Maybe even 360. I know the original one was 360.
Yeah.
I can't remember when the second game came out exactly, but they've updated it a ton.
Lot, yeah.
And they they've come out with several updates this year even.
Yeah.
And so it's just a really cool game that I enjoy playing. Old favorite that I went back to this year.
Nice. Our next award is the Out of Time Award for a game that we didn't have time to play this year.
I am pretty sure that I've mentioned it, but Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
It's
a big one.
Yeah, that's currently one of the top games on my list. Like that, Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, and maybe Lords of the Fallen underneath both of those. So those are like the games where I'm just like, yeah, there was just so much going on this year, and time, money, all of those things where it's just like, man, so many big things that came out for $70 that I want to play, but
yep.
Between time and between money, it's like, yep, I'm not gonna, like, I'll get to this later when it's on sale.
Yeah, for me, the three that are kind of left are Street Fighter, which is one that I just kind of want to check out.
Yeah.
That was really big this year, but I'm not super into that as a series, so I don't want to spend the full price on it. So like I'll get to it eventually. Lords of the Fallen, which I would have played already, except for all the technical issues that I still hear are not quite fixed. So I'm like, why am I going to spend this much money? Might as well wait and see if it gets better.
Yeah. Well, whenever you buy it, it'll come to Game Pass, so don't worry.
Yeah. And then the game I'm going to give the award to is Blasphemous 2, because I really enjoyed the first game. The second one is on a wish list.
Yeah.
I'm just, time and money. It's not a super expensive game, but I know it's going to go down, and also just have played other things instead. But it's one that I'm definitely looking forward to when I finally get around to it.
Yeah. You plan on picking it up on Switch?
Yeah. Yeah. Both it and The Last Faith I want to play on Switch.
Yeah.
It just feels good.
For sure.
And now we're going to look to the future a little bit with our last couple awards. The next one is probably GOTY 2024.
Yep. So this is, for me, I have not, like at the time of recording our Game of the Year 2023 list, I had not played enough Baldur's Gate 3 to feel super comfortable. Like,
right.
Like I know it's going to be on there, but it's also like between recency bias and the fact that I was still like in Act 1 of the game. I was like, I'm not going to put it on this list. So
yeah.
That said, I am in Act 2 now and still really loving the game and fully anticipate it being my Game of the Year for 2024, unless, something else crazy comes out. But even then, I still am sort of anticipating it being number one, and maybe just the rest of my list shifting around it. So,
yeah, I'm very curious how next year shakes out, because I don't feel like currently there is a heavy hitter for me that is like
Elden Ring DLC.
Yeah, right. Like there's no Elden Ring, there's no Witcher game, there's definitely some interesting games that I want to play. So for me, currently looking at the games we know about, a game I think that I'm really going to enjoy, and a game that I think the industry could end up as being Game of the Year, or at least getting on a lot of lists, is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the part 2 of the 7 remake.
Yeah.
Which is already beloved, and it looks like number 2 is just going to be more of that. So I'm very curious to see how that game does. I don't know if it'll be my Game of the Year, because we really don't know much about especially the back half of 2024. But looking at what's coming up, that seems like one of the really heavy hitters that we know about.
Yes.
And then our final award for this year's Effin' Game Awards, most anticipated game of 2024.
Mine is a tie. Star Wars Outlaws looks amazing from the, I'm sure, pre-rendered cutscene that we watched in trailers.
Yeah, the vertical slice that we got. Yeah. It does look cool.
But it does look really cool. And it's
the good Ubisoft studio.
It's the people that made The Division, right? And so I have really enjoyed the Division games. And it looks like what I wanted Starfield to be. Like, where you go around to like this little sci-fi space world with aliens and stuff, and then you can get in your ship and take off and fly and then land on a new planet or whatever. Like, it looks like they're shooting for that game.
Almost too good to be true.
That said,
giving me Watchdog vibes.
Yeah. That said, I'm skeptical because it looks really good, and I'm like, okay, but now granted, the Division 2 came out 2017.
Oh yeah,
the expansion for it came out in like 2018, 2019. So like they've had time.
I think it was a little. We talked about Division 2 on LPF, so 2019 maybe.
Yeah. Maybe the first game came out in 2017 or something.
That sounds right.
And so, but still, they've had
a
few years probably that they've been working on this.
And it's got Star Wars money behind it. So I'm hopeful. That said, too, this is our most anticipated game of 2024. I don't believe for a second it's coming out in 2024. It might not make
I think it's going to get pushed to 2025. So,
but who would have thought that Avatar was actually coming out this year?
That's true too. I would have predicted that got pushed too. Realistically, though, Dragon's Dogma 2.
That game
is
cool.
Probably coming out into like that game's 95% sure coming out in 2024. I think early 2024, like first half.
Yeah.
So I'd be shocked to see it get pushed out of 2024. I have tried to play the original Dragon's Dogma several times and just kind of, not that I didn't enjoy it, but it was just like, it has the old Capcom problem where it's like so many systems and so many things that they don't explain at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see what what Dragon's Dogma 2 does. Is it Capcom?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm interested to see what it does.
Like, will it have better onboarding?
And just like a sort of some of the maybe rougher edges, some of the quality of life things that a lot of Capcom's newer games have come out with. I'm excited to see what they do because in my opinion, Capcom has just been hitting it out of the park recently.
Yes,
for the most part. So
if Dragon's Dogma 2 clicks with me, I could see it being pretty high on my list. Like, it checks a lot of the boxes that I look for.
It does. It does indeed. It might scratch that Elden Ring void when they delay Shadows of the Erdtree until 2025.
Wow, that's going to be like a whole nother game if they push it back that late. Speaking of Souls, though, my most anticipated game is Black Myth Wukong, which I watched the Fextra Life video on recently, and it's apparently like a pretty boss-heavy game, not quite as much about like level exploration and fighting mobs, but man, it looks crazy. It looks incredible. And like just the transformations the character can do, the weapons, the visuals, it's so flashy, so fast. It looks like next year's Lies of P as far as understanding the assignment and then knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get my hands on that game. It looks incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And every time I see like trailers and stuff for it, I'm like, this game does look very cool.
Yeah.
So the downside is it hasn't been announced to be coming to Game Pass yet.
That is a bummer. Yeah.
So Phil Spencer,
get on.
We know you listen. We know that you clearly, like, as soon as we start talking about Remnant 2 shows up on Game Pass.
Out of nowhere. No announcement, nothing.
Yeah,
just literally pops on there.
So we know you've got the finger on our pulse, Phil. So if you could go ahead and get Black Myth Wukong ahead of time, that'd be great.
Yeah, let us know. Or just let us know, behind the scenes. We don't have to tell anybody. That's fine. As long as we know.
Or if you're a developer for Black Myth Wukong, we'll talk about your game.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll do an ad.
Well, that has been the Effin' Game Awards for 2023. It's quite a list. Bunch of games this year, a bunch of good games, a handful of disappointing games. But yeah, it's been an interesting, very enjoyable year for the hobby of gaming.
Yes.
Overall, so
yeah, it's definitely a year I'm excited to, like, in a year or two, come back to and re-rate our top 10.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's just a lot that we didn't play this year that will show up on a top 10 list if we re-rate it.
Didn't play, and then things that could move around based on replays or whatever. Yeah, it'll be a very interesting one to look back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this has already been a pretty solid, beefy episode, so housekeeping, we can keep it short and sweet. I mean, check out our YouTube channel. We would very much appreciate that. If
you haven't listened to our Game of the Year episode and you want a short version of it, that's on YouTube.
We'll have our Game of the Year lists up there, along with a bunch of other really cool videos that more people should be watching.
Yes.
And then as far as the podcast, if you enjoyed this year of podcasting, just leave us a rating, a review. Those kind of things go a long way. And if you want to interact with us, hang out with us, Discord is the best place to do that. We are also on TikTok, X, and Instagram. But to actually like hang out and have meaningful conversations, Discord is definitely the best place to be.
Yes, for sure.
Cool. Well, this, I think, wraps up like our big end of year look back style content. Our next episode will be our predictions revisit for 2023. So the predictions we made at the beginning of the year, we're going to look back and see how we did.
Yep.
That's going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to recording that. So stay tuned for that on the podcast. But as far as this episode, thank you all so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Friendly Neighborhood Gamers podcast. If so, we would greatly appreciate your help in growing the show and the community by giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other podcasting app that allows it.
We also have some great videos on our YouTube channel, including reviews, rankings, and other topics. We would really appreciate you checking it out. And if you want to keep up with everything going on in the neighborhood, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to jump in our Discord server.
We hope to see you there. Links for everything are in the podcast description. Thanks again for listening, and remember, stay friendly, gamers.